I fell asleep last night after the halftime because I'm like, okay, they're up 22. Yeah, they're on the road, but Utah looks like they're going to put this team away. Conley looks like he's organizing the offense, getting everybody in their right spot. So I thought it was going to be a pretty, convincing win, come back for game 7 in Utah. And, my prediction would stay strong. And then I wake up and I see greatest comeback ever, 25-point deficit down. I'm like, are you kidding me? You can never go to sleep on the NBA.
Let me put you on game.
But let's get into the playoff series, man. Let's not waste any time. Let's get into probably the juiciest one, which is Utah and LA. How are you feeling about the result with the Clippers pulling off an absolutely improbable win in the most improbable fashion?
I just have to say that, LA has squandered my predictions again. They have completely destroyed my bracket, and it is by miracle. It's all miraculous because this has come out of nowhere. I fell asleep last night after the halftime because I'm like, okay, they're up 22. Yeah, they're on the road, but Utah looks like they're going to put this team away. Conley looks like he's organizing the offense, getting everybody in their right spot. So I thought it was going to be a pretty, convincing win, come back for game 7 in Utah. And, my prediction would stay strong. And then I wake up and I see greatest comeback ever, 25-point deficit down. I'm like, are you kidding me? You can never go to sleep on the NBA, man. And it was a man night,
Yeah.
Man put on a performance. I saw him doing his thing in the first half, and I was like, they're down 20. Yeah, he roared a little bit, but he's a contributor and he's not gonna make much of a difference. I wake up and this dude dropped 39 off a 7 of 10 3-point shooting and dunks and putbacks and just showing up on both ends of the floor. And he had a performance of a lifetime in an elimination game, and the team came out on top.
Yeah, he was electric, man.
Yeah, he completely seized the opportunity, despite the fact that Donovan Mitchell showed up and did his best, putting up 39, averaging 35, 5, and 5 for the series on 45% shooting from three. It just wasn't enough. Gobert, I think he was hurt, and I feel like that kind of impacted their defensive rotation to some degree. But it ultimately, I guess he just got exposed because Clippers just went 5 wide, shooting from everywhere. And when you look at the performance of Utah, all of their shooters showed up. They just couldn't make shots when it mattered, I suppose, and they couldn't get stops. I mean, 131 to 119, like that's insane. The Clippers were doing that all season, but I didn't expect to see that in the playoffs without Kawhi Leonard. So this is a miraculous win.
Yeah, I'm gonna get on my soapbox for a second.
Mm-hmm.
What are they gonna do about Rudy Gobert? Like, I'm gonna get to LA in a second, but Rudy Gobert is a multiple-time defensive player of the year. We all acknowledge the statistics are great. He's theoretically a good rim protector. He's a deterrent. But watching this series, man, like, he's a complete offensive liability. Like, the reason that the Clippers can go 5 out is because they don't have to play Zubac. Like, there's been possessions this series where Rudy Gobert is literally getting guarded by either Batum, Reggie Jackson, or Marcus Morris. And they won't pass him the ball because they know that he doesn't really have an offensive package in order to score. So it's like, if you can play your 7'3" center with Reggie Jackson as his primary defender on certain possessions, like, you're lost offensively. That's why they struggle so much to score during like certain stretches. And like, how does the defensive player of the year become a defensive liability? Like, in what world does that happen? Like, during the end of that Clippers game, during that comeback, he was consistently being hunted on every possession by Reggie Jackson.
Who had himself a night, yo. Oh
Yeah,
my
Reggie Jackson
goodness.
is a good NBA player. I think we can all acknowledge that he's a starter. He's a starter level player, but he's not a star. Like, if your defensive player of the year is getting eaten up by a star, that's just what happens. Good offense beats good defense. But when Reggie Jackson is out here shooting up floaters over what's supposed to be the best shot blocker in the league, like, you have some serious questions. Like, and also Rudy Gobert not being able to get out to the perimeter effectively and just staying in the paint was the reason Terrence Mann had such a huge game. Like, he was consistently not rotating outward and leaving Terrence Mann open in the corners. That's why he was able to shoot so well. Not that Terrence Mann isn't talented, because I think that he should have played more last series, and he's actually finally getting the minutes that he should be getting this series because he competes well defensively. He's a good, competent offensive player. He's a little hesitant at times, but he's young. But he's a really talented player. But he's not almost 40 points talented. And part of the reasoning behind that 40 points is Rudy Gobert's inability to adjust. So we talked about defensive player of the year a few podcasts ago. You guys should go back and check that out for our awards picks. But I talked about Ben Simmons being my defensive player of the year because he's more defensively versatile. But Rudy Gobert, defensive player of the year, just becomes this liability. But I mean, it's Donovan Mitchell did everything he could, but I think that the loss, a lot of it is on Rudy Gobert. But really quickly on the Clippers, I think they have to be one of the most puzzling and resilient teams I've ever seen. They've come back now from down 0-2 twice and facing these improbable odds, but they're also puzzling because the reason that they go down 0-2 is because they fail to make these adjustments. Like, they fail to put their best defensive players on the best offensive player on the other team. And then they also fail to play players that actually should be playing, like Terrence Mann. So there's so much going on there. But also, like, shout out to Paul George as well. Like, he's gotten a lot of flack for his lack of ability to show up in late game moments, and he's been really huge these last two games. He's come up and he showed up, and it's good to see that from him.
It really is, and it's been just downright impressive, and their ability to come back and just the poise that they showed in this game 6 to not only come back from that deficit, but then take a 12-point lead to end the game. Like, it was just phenomenal. And I think you do put a lot of blame on Rudy Gobert, but I also put a lot of blame on Quinn Snyder, the head coach. Like, you see that man is lighting you up. You got to do something to stop that fountain. You know, you got to plug up that hole somehow. And I thought that Utah had enough wing bodies to throw at LA, but they clearly just didn't. And even if you switch Gobert out with Derek Favors at the 5, when you have Nicholas Batum out there who can still, light you up from 3 if he's open, it was just an onslaught of shooting, to be honest. And I'm just really impressed. And shout outs to Ty Lue, because he made the correct adjustments and has led this team to an improbable, playoff run, which will be very fascinating to see now that we know who the Western Conference final playoff matchup will be between LA and Phoenix. And who knows if Phoenix is going to have Chris Paul, who is on health and safety protocol, and what that does to that team's chemistry, because we've seen how Phoenix operates without Chris Paul in the lineup, and it's not very pretty. I have no idea what's going to happen now. There's so much. There's so much in the air, and it really is going to be fascinating to see how these both teams adjust. We could see the Clippers in the NBA Finals.
Yeah, I'm hearing that Chris Paul may only have to miss one game, if no games at all.
Mhm.
because of the fact that he's vaccinated, and I think that might change the COVID safety protocols. But
Mm.
yeah, just to circle back very briefly, yeah, Utah had to win this series. No Kawhi, uh, a hobbled Clippers team. They absolutely had to win the series, and they came up short.